Hello, and welcome to another episode of That's Good, Pick It Up, a podcast mostly about books. This is Robbie Woodard, the founder and producer of All BestBall podcast, introducing a show for our friend Nate Axman and John Morton. Today we're actually taking a look at one of the episodes we used on the Whole Story podcast from an author, Ward Clayton, who wrote a book, Legendary Caddies of Augusta National. This fits perfectly with what we're doing here at That's Good, Pick It Up. It's a great story. You'll learn a lot about the Masters, Augusta National, and it's just a great book. Check out what Ward's doing. Make sure you're following along to this podcast. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can check out bestball.com for all the different podcasts and shows that we have going on. But for now, we hope you enjoy this episode of That's Good, Pick It Up. Well, Ward Clayton, thank you for joining us on the Whole Story podcast. Ward, like we mentioned in the intro, wrote originally Men of the Bag, Caddies of Augusta National, but now he's got a new book that we're going to talk about that he kind of redid, and so we're excited. Ward, thanks for joining us today on the Whole Story podcast.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I was going to say, so one thing we always talk to folks, obviously it's a golf podcast, but you're a writer about golf. So which bug bit you first? Was it the golf bug, or did you start writing away at 6 years old, long prose or something like that in first grade?
I think it was in concert with one another. I grew up in Durham, North Carolina, and ACC basketball, even though it's not very good right now, was sort of in my blood. And believe it or not, South Carolina was a member of the ACC at that time.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
That's our one conference championship in basketball.
Exactly. So football and basketball were my cornerstones, but I lived about 3 blocks away from the Durham's municipal golf course. So that was my babysitter in the summer. So you turn in one direction, you go to the public golf course, you turn in the other direction and go about 2 miles to Duke University, where college basketball was pretty good. Of course, I saw the light later and went to school in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. But still, I'm a product of my environment, ACC basketball and golf next door. So therefore, that's been a big part of my life for the extent of that. So writing was always interesting to me. To answer your question, is that I was always intrigued with not how many points so-and-so scored, but what motivated them, what was their backstory. I wanted to know who the person behind the scenes was and what they did to motivate themselves and get ready to play. So that's where that came from.
Love that. So did you, you started playing at an early age, you play other sports as well? I mean, obviously you kind of in basketball country there. Were you a basketball star and everything else? And
star is a stretch. I was a basketball player, a football player, but golf was interesting to me because I took some of the guys that played football with me in high school to the public course to play golf, and they couldn't get their arms around it because in football or basketball, if you ran faster or tried harder or hit harder, that was effective. But in golf, if you did that, it fell apart. So it was more of a mental kind of thing for them. They really had to understand you had to play within yourself. So that was always interesting to see people that didn't play golf trying to tackle golf who'd grown up playing team sports. So golf's a little bit of a different animal, and you can't get too emotional or too down on yourself. So I think we've all learned that doesn't always work, but still we try to do that.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
I was going to say, so maybe just like Michael Jordan, you struggled with your making the basketball team as a freshman or sophomore, and then you sort of made the switch to golf. Or when did journalism and writing begin? Was that high school days where you began checking the backstories of the football players that you knew?
Yeah. It began in high school. Boy, this goes back a long way here. Thank you. I was the co-editor of the high school newspaper.
Nice.
And so that's when the bug sort of hit me. In those days in Durham, just like in Columbia or Augusta, there was a morning newspaper and there was an afternoon newspaper. And so you were sort of surrounded by it. So, with, University of South Carolina or Masters coverage or Duke or North Carolina or NC State basketball or football, I was surrounded by that. So I was always intrigued by how you put things into words. It was always something I always liked telling the story in full, sort of a long form. I guess from you guys' perspective, you do a podcast now. Podcasting is very much of a long form kind of format versus just having a 5 minute, 10 minute radio or television interview. So I always enjoy getting on and talking at length with people with things like this.
I feel like writing it and what we're doing, like you said in podcasts, we love the backstory as well. We don't really talk about the day to day. Hey, let's talk about Victor Hovland, who just won a golf tournament, but let's get into the backstories. And we like stories about people kind of around the game, like yourself, that have been doing great things. And, we mentioned before that this is coming out the Thursday of the Masters week. And you worked for the Augusta Chronicle for 9 years back in the 1900s. I like to joke, from 91 to 2000. And I'm guessing it probably wasn't your first introduction being in the Carolinas. You were already introduced and knew golf and knew the Masters and everything, but that's probably where you really got your first kind of on hands, nearby experience of Augusta National and the Masters, correct?
First time I ever went to the Masters was 1985 when I was working at the Durham newspaper, which preceded me going to Augusta. And the first time I walked on Augusta National, I thought it was AstroTurf. Because I grew up on a public golf course and played some decent golf courses. Pinehurst isn't far away, but still, you walk out on the turf at Augusta National, it's just it's surreal. It feels like you're walking on fake grass. So that was my first experience with going to Augusta. And I was bitten with the bug. Robbie, I have some friends who have gone for longer than I have who still go, and we always talk about we're going to the promised land. It's like when the Israelites were released from slavery in Egypt, they made a trek toward the promised land, and that's what we sort of call it going. It's like going to I don't know what you call it, going to a mosque or something. How people or to a Christian land, to a Christian heritage place. That's what we sort of feel like we're doing, because we feel like we're in a world apart when you go there.
Yeah, no, I think there'll be golf in heaven for sure, and it will probably look and be maintained by the same folks that keep up Augusta National. So.
Exactly.
Yep.
Your pilgrimage of crossing the Red Sea or Washington Road, depending on which direction you're coming from.
I don't know which is worse, trying to cross Washington Road or the Red Sea, and the same amount of difficulty.
So you moved to Augusta in 91. When did you begin writing the book about these caddies? Or maybe talk more about discovering the stories of the caddies, because they're there to be had, and your book goes into incredible detail. But some of this history, as someone who's a transplant to Augusta, is unknown to local Augustans and probably hidden in some factors, right? Like not wanted to be talked about in the open.
Well, your first question, these caddy stories, since you're in Augusta, and the Augusta Chronicle historically has done a really thorough job on covering the town, particularly in advance. And we would do a lot of historic stories and go through the archives of the Chronicle. And occasionally we'd run into, in the 40s and the 50s, the mention of the caddy, but quite often it was just by the caddy's nickname. And I said, wow, that's sort of bizarre. Who was this person that was caddying for, Jack Nicklaus or Arnold Palmer or Ben Hogan, et cetera, like that? And I said, that's an interesting story to find out who these guys are, see if they're still around, and B, who they really were. So that came to the forefront. You ask about Augusta National and secrets and so forth like that. I think they keep their brand as tight as they can, and therefore things like, what's the speed of the greens? You don't know that. How many people attend? They don't divulge that. Things of that nature. So you're sort of left to try to do some rooting around, trying to figure out what those stories are. This caddy story intrigued me because a lot of these guys are really instrumental in leading these players to victories, but they didn't get a lot of attention because they were caddies, and until 1983 they were all black. So therefore, there wasn't a lot of interest from the media during the 40s, 50s, 60s, and then the 70s in telling that story.
Well, you took, like we mentioned, you had your book, The Men on the Bag, and you've recently redone it, now called Legendary Caddies of Augusta National. I love this quote that gives, talked about the caddies. These caddies and their stories throughout the years have formed just as much fixture of the Masters tournament and Augusta National as any club founder, champion, azaleas, slick greens, green jackets, and pimento cheese sandwiches. So I think that's a great way to describe just what these caddies mean to the course, to the tournament in general. And it's a great summary of what people are going to get when they read your book.
Yeah, well, I think when you think about the Masters, you think about all the things you mentioned, but how often do you also think about the jumpsuit these caddies wear? Carl Jackson calls that, who caddied for Ben Crenshaw in his 2 wins. He calls that the tuxedo of caddy uniforms. So, and I can tell you from talking to some of these Augusta caddies and outside caddies, those jumpsuits it's a love-hate relationship with those things. If you've got a 85-degree day in Augusta, they hate those jumpsuits because they're hot. But if it's a cold day, they love it because it gives them a little, something against the cold weather. I think in some of the intelligence these guys developed over the years with how to read greens, where it was, how far it was from a certain spot, how the wind blows, things of that nature. That stuff still exists. There's no doubt about it. That heritage of the Augusta Caddies lives on today. Since you're in Columbia, in 2020 when Dustin Johnson won, and he got his brother Austin, both of them from Columbia. Austin Johnson, his younger brother's his caddy. To this day, they've got a guy who works at Augusta year-round named Steve Kling. And Kling befriended Dustin and caddied for him away from Augusta National. Every year, they would come in advance, and Steve would walk them around the golf course in practice rounds before Masters Week and say, hey, this green's been changed here. This is a new tee box. These trees are no longer here. All this kind of stuff. And the rule at Augusta is that before Masters Week, if you want to come play a practice round, you've got to take a club caddy. But Austin Johnson, who's his regular caddy, can go along and be with him and sort of walk around and scout it out. So I think a lot of that heritage of some of the changes to the golf course, some of the subtle changes, still carries on today, and is using that as an example.
I think there'd be incredible stories, and I know you've gotten to play it through the media lottery, but I think there would be just incredible stories just to go walk with a caddy or two and just have them kind of tell stories as you walk the course. Have you had the opportunity to do that?
I've gone to a couple of places on the golf course with Carl Jackson, which is really cool. We did a video 2 years ago with Carl, and we went to the 13th hole, and that was the first year they had extended the tee box on 13 back into the trees. And Carl was not only talking about the changes and how the hole plays, but he also pointed out, he said, I used to walk from Sandhills, which is the neighborhood where a lot of these caddies grew up, which is on the other side of Augusta Country Club. I used to walk down the edge of Augusta Country Club and come onto the grounds of Augusta National through a hole in the fence behind the 13th tee. And that was just cool hearing him talk about that. And he went over and pointed at Race Creek where Nelson Bridge is and said, We used to swim in the creek here. We used to fish in the creek here, and we would build a fire over here on the bank and cook fish. It was just really cool to hear him talk about his upbringing and how it, basically he grew up on that golf course. And I thought that was tremendously interesting to hear him talk about that. No wonder he knows how the golf course plays. He had these guys like Pappy Stokes tell him how the golf course plays, but also he grew up there, so he could go over there in the summer and be there and sort of see how the golf course looked when it was, when it was not being used, when the club was closed.
Talk more about that, because you lived here back, you came in 85, you worked here in the 90s, and then today, obviously being familiar with the course, but you also interacted with those folks, I'm assuming through the Augusta Chronicle and everywhere else in town, that they remember bringing their lunch with them on a Sunday afternoon to watch the final round where you could just walk in and play, versus what it looks like today, where as soon as something is built or created, there's 18-foot tall trees that block the view of anything.
Yep, yep. I think Augusta National has always been known for its precise conditioning. I think back in the 40s and the 50s, it was better than everywhere else, but it wasn't quite as, like a green carpet everywhere. You had some rough patches and places. You look at old pictures of the 12th hole, for example. The edges around Ray's Creek, he had little patches of rough and things of that nature, but still the golf course was much better than people were used to playing. So I think the golf course has become um, very, sort I'm looking for, very not pampered, but exact. Everything is mowed to a certain height, whereas it was back in the 40s and 50s and maybe even into the 60s. There was some places on the edge, but that's the way, golf courses weren't maintained that way anywhere. So I think that's changed a bit. This is the standard for, if you want to have a perfectly conditioned golf course, Augusta's the example. So I think a lot of folks, the Players Championship 2 weeks ago, it's now overseed ryegrass and white sand in the bunkers. I really noted that this year when they were showing some of the pictures. I've not seen that bright white sand in those bunkers at TPC Sawgrass like it was a couple weeks ago.
And there's rumors that TGL had some similar sand in their bunkers, right, for the indoor?
I wouldn't be surprised. You're right. I was in the North Carolina mountains on vacation last week. I'll share a story with you. There's a little town called Spruce Pine, which is a real little community in the North Carolina mountains up near Boone and that area. And that's where that sand comes from. Clifford Roberts used to go to Grandfather Mountain Golf Club in the summer. That's where he lived, and some of the other staff members did. And they loved the sand they used in the bunkers there because the ball would not bury in the bunkers because it was basically really, really, really fine rock that was developed up there. And Augusta National imported that sand down from the North Carolina mountains to Augusta. And great story. This good old boy up in the North Carolina mountains who runs this quarry, which does the sand. Uh, a couple of Japanese golf courses found out that's where the sand was developed, and so they reached out to him. Didn't speak very good English, and they're on the phone with him, and they said, "Will you make the sand at Augusta National?" I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Well, we would like to get some." And he said, "Okay, okay." He said, then they said, "You send sand, we send money." And the fellow said, "What did you say?" He said, "You send sand, we send money." And he said, "No, no, no. You send money, we send sand." So that's another example of how Augusta National has found something that they didn't want the ball to bury in the bunker. So they got this bright white sand, which was beautiful, but it also allowed for the course of play to be different. And I know guys have to get used to that. I remember David Duvall used to always say that he wore his sunglasses, those wraparound Oakleys. He really needed those at Augusta because the sand was so bright it really hurt his eyes. So he liked to have a little bit of shade.
As someone who frequents bunkers, I know what he's talking about. It can be pretty bright. Yeah.
Mine are always buried, so maybe I just need to find better sand.
Yeah, you just need to find better sand. What does your week look like? As it we're talking today is a few weeks before, but this will come out on Masters Week. What does your Masters Week look like? Because you're still writing, you're still in the journalism business, and so I imagine maybe you'll be on site for doing some things there.
I'll be there from the week before.
You'll go to the ANWA and everything else.
Be there from South. Well, I'll be there on Friday when they play the practice rounds for the all the way through the conclusion of the month. So I'm there for about 12 days.
Is that 12 long stories that you write every night, huddled over your desk at the hotel?
Yeah, that's the picture I want to tell everybody.
They let him stay in Butler Cabin, so he's.
Yeah, that's right, in the basement where they have the studio.
There you go.
But we're there from first thing in the morning until play concludes, and after with video and written word, social media across every platform, things of that nature. So it's a busy place and a busy time. But as I always tell people, boy, where else would you want to work if you're having a long day? So that's pretty good.
During that working time, though, do you have opportunity just to get out and then kind of take a deep breath and enjoy just the surroundings and being there? I mean, I know it's probably, even while you're working, it's like, amazing just to step foot on the grounds, but are you allowed to, find peace and go watch a shot or two?
Oh yeah, you've got to. Robbie, if you were there and weren't able to go out to the golf course, you might as well be in New York or somewhere like that. You got to go out and experience it and sort of get motivated by going out there and seeing it. I love to go out and walk the front nine because even though the entire 18 holes is now televised, you still don't get a real sense of the front nine. I don't think. Particularly, some of the greens that you see out there, like the fifth green or the sixth greens come to mind because they're just, they're humongous with these big, humps and bumps and elevation changes and things like that. I think that's really the cool part of the golf course, to see some of the front nine that you don't experience quite as readily.
Do you have a favorite spot on the course for stories to develop?
My favorite place to watch the golf tournament is behind 7 green.
Why is that?
Think if you're behind 7 green, it's one of the highest points on the golf course. You have a scoreboard right behind you. You can see 2 green, 3 tee, 7 coming at you. You can flip around and you're at 17 fairway. So it's really cool to sort of be in the middle of everything. Plus, you're not far from a restroom and concessions. 8th tee's not far away. It's really really sort of a central point of the golf course. And I think that's a cool place to watch because you got a really great vantage point.
Well, you mentioned the scoreboards, and we do a round table kind of before and after every major, and we just did one for the Masters coming up. And I think Jonathan was the one that mentioned one of his favorite things about Augusta National and the Masters is that nobody has their phones. And you talk about the scoreboards and just how they tell a story because people are watching it when they hear a cheer and echoes through the pines on the other side of the course. They're sitting there watching with anticipation of what just happened, to see these letters and numbers start flipping, to see what story just took place to change these things. I think that's one of the beautiful things about Augusta National.
Well, not only that, but you also, if you go to concessions and they have a little table out back, you share tables with people.
Yeah.
And you're not sitting there diving into your phone. You're asking, Robbie, where are you from? And all of a sudden you struck up a conversation. I think, and I'm probably going to get the author's name wrong here, so I won't mention it. But the Golf Writers Association of America, one of the writers won an award this year for the story about what happened last year or the year before when the trees fell on 16 and nobody got injured. One of the little parts of that story, which was interesting to me, was as the people that were sitting near where the trees fell were paying attention to their surroundings. They weren't diving into their phones, so they probably were aware that a tree was having some difficulty and was getting ready to fall, so they were able to move quickly. So if they were to have been on their phones, who knows what would have happened? That's one of the cool things. You talk about getting away from everything when you go onto the grounds at Augusta National. Not having a phone allows you to interact with people more readily, be aware of your surroundings, and plus you got to do like the old people like me. You got to figure out, well, if we get separated, we got to meet at a certain point at a certain time. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, when you're there with your kids, always kind of have a check-in moment, like, hey, every 2 hours, let's say, let's meet at this certain spot. I love it.
Yep, no doubt.
Maybe that's your next book, Stories from the Concession Tables, and you can talk to everybody. Because if you love golf, or even if you don't love golf, it's still probably one of the best days of your life if you have the opportunity to go. Because as someone who's gone a few times, and obviously you've been there a bunch, it's hard to remember that it is a rare opportunity for almost everyone else in the world.
I agree. There's a guy, and once again, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's had tickets for 40 years. Every year, he's from Western North Carolina. Every year, he identifies a handful of people who've never been, and he brings new people to the tournament every year.
That's perfect.
I told him that. I said, I've never been before. And he said, what are you telling me this for? He said, I've had people tell me that before, and they've been 10 times. So I sort of vet people that have never been before, because I get just as much joy out of them going for the first time as I do going for my 40th time.
I've got a friend this year that maybe we're lucky enough that we're listening to this on the podcast in his truck on the way for his first time to the National. So, Sherv, if we're on our way to the National on Thursday, Sherv, we'll make sure to fast forward to this part so you get your highlight shout out.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's always one of the coolest things for me, is to see somebody that's never been there before and get their perception of what it's like to be there. And to be truthful with you, you don't have to be a golfer to enjoy that. I always tell people that if you enjoy going to like a park or gardens or something of that nature, that's what you're doing here. It's really cool. And plus, you don't spend a lot of money on food either. So
that is true. That is true. Now I'm proudly displaying my press credential application that was rejected this year, but it's up there for motivation, because these are the stories like we would love to tell. We would love to go and talk and interview people about, hey, is this your first time? Is this your 40th time? And just hear those stories, because those to us, golf is about people for us, and the experience you get to hang out if you're playing 4 or 5 hours with somebody, and the stories that come from that, or in special places like Augusta National, the first time, the 40th time, and all in between, or bringing a kid, bringing your dad, all the different things that are coming. So one day we'll see you in the press room for the Masters tournament. But Masters is full of tradition, and I'm curious, what are some of the traditions of the Masters, besides maybe just the caddies and their white jumpsuits, that stand out to you? What are some of your favorites?
I think the Champions Dinner is pretty cool. Champions Dinner is so exclusive. It's just the guys who have won and the chairman of the club in the room. Wouldn't it be great to be a fly on the wall in that room and just hear some of the conversation that goes on there, and some of the food and some of the atmosphere there? That I think a lot of the guys who won in recent years asked about that. I think they get more nervous talking about determining what the menu is going to be and having to stand up and make a speech before that group. I think that makes them more nervous than standing on the first tee sometimes, because they're sort of out of their comfort zone. They're not swinging a golf club. They're having to make a speech or choosing food, which you're not sure how people are going to react to. So I think that's really a cool tradition every Tuesday night that they do, and I'm sure they probably can be very influential if there's some controversy in the world of golf or some controversy on the golf course. They probably weigh in at that time too.
Well, especially with some of the crowd this year, I guess in the past few years, right? There's controversy already in the room, so I can't imagine what some of those conversations are like. Yep. I think
Of
as Jonathan and I would probably agree that making a speech and picking out menus would be much less nerve wracking
right.
than swinging on the first tee in front of all those people. They would be the spectator or the patrons, I should say, would be in danger zones.
I've been like, you might want to move back. You might want to move back. So whether it's your first time or your 40th time, there's always a memory that stands out. What is your favorite Masters memory?
1986 is unparalleled. I was working in the press, but was with some friends from North Carolina who were in attendance and started watching Nicholas on the ninth hole. Nicholas is their favorite player. The ninth hole, and Buddy Whitfield, who's no longer with us, Buddy went 56 Masters. Um, Buddy said after the ninth hole, well, Nicholas made that. Every time Nicholas makes a birdie, we've got to drink a Budweiser. And lo and behold, Nicholas shoots 30 on the back nine. So, that was that was quite the back nine to have that happen. Whether you were cold beer or whether you were just watching the golf tournament. That's one of the few times I can ever remember people running around that golf course. And security's telling them to stop, but security got into it too. They were probably running from spot to spot too. So it was that was really a cool experience. Not only Nicholas, but look who was beating down the stretch. It was like a who's who of the golf world that day. So that was really cool.
Every year, new
Good
memories
moment.
are created. So, how much golf are you getting to play? I know you're in the Jacksonville area, and when we first started chatting about coming on this thing, you were hanging out and going to watch the players. How much golf are you actually getting to play?
Not enough.
That's always the
Um,
answer, right?
yeah, yeah. I wish I could play more. Actually, I was in Charleston 2 weeks ago with some friends from North Carolina. We played there, and we played three places. We played Wild Dunes. I don't remember the second course we played. But we played Charleston Municipal, and that was by far the best experience. We walked, paid. I'm out of town senior, $50 to play walking. You couldn't beat it. It was really cool, and it was a windy day. And you guys have played Charleston Municipal. The back nine was like standing upright on some of those holes out there by the marsh was difficult. That's a treasure there to have a municipal golf course like that, and they're busy from sun up to sundown. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, Jonathan and I had a tee time there, and we get in the parking lot, and the bottom fell out, and there was
So
no golf going to be
close.
played that day. So
Oh man,
it's on the go back and do it again list.
yeah, it was really cool, really well conditioned. The greens are crazy, sort of like the Augusta Nationals greens are. It was just fun.
So we ask all our guests then. We everybody wants to play more, but golf is about memories. So what's the story of your most memorable golf shot?
Most memorable golf shot. 2019, um, had the opportunity to play the Old Course, and I did it via the single golfer route, which no longer exists. So I show up at 2:30 in the morning to the starters facility and got on at 3:30 in the afternoon. Like we walked speed of play here. We walked 18 holes with a foursome in 4 hours. But the coolest shot was hitting it over the corner and up the right side of the fairway on the road. That was really cool. Which little people know there's a bar on top of the hotel beside it, and the people up there have had a few drinks under their belt. They're yelling at the people on the 17th hole that hit it. So just being in that atmosphere, hitting over the corner of the road of the road hole was really fun. No crazy great result, but just walking by there was really neat, really neat.
And you didn't hit the hotel, which is impressive in itself.
No, I did not. I was excited about that.
Very nice. Love it.
Yeah.
I
What a
might
story.
hook it up onto the bar top if I'm unlucky. I'm a lefty, so hopefully I don't
Good.
Yeah.
squeeze it
I
up
would
there.
encourage that.
Yeah.
Well, we always do this thing called the Quick Nine. Jonathan, why don't you kick off our Quick Nine, little back and forth, kind of rapid fire questions here?
Yep. So the first question is, what is the favorite course that you've played?
Fort St. Andrews.
All right.
All right. Well, I imagine doing what you've done, you've got to play a lot, but what course is at the top of your bucket list?
Bucket list. Seminole, South Florida. I'd love to play there. Bandon, any of the courses at Bandon Dunes, because Bandon's sort of the replica of courses in the UK and so forth in Scotland. And so I'd love to do that.
Got a good caddy program out there. You can go write some stories about those guys.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. Mike Kaiser, who built Bandon Dunes, built his caddy program to be one of the top jobs there because he realized pretty quickly, the three of us go out there, we're going to spend more time with our caddy than we are with each other. And he wanted to make sure the caddy program was stellar so that people got a great experience. So the caddies are essential there. So that's pretty cool.
Yep.
All right. Besides Robbie and myself, we'll exclude ourselves. Who would be in your dream foursome?
Dream foursome, three other guys. It'd probably be guys I grew up with in North Carolina, just like we were in Charleston 2 weeks ago. I just enjoy playing golf with the people I grew up playing with when I was a kid. I could say Tiger Woods, Arnold Palmer, Ben Hogan, Lee Trevino, things like that. But I would think those three guys would be fun because if I play with those guys, I'd play like a dog because I'd be so intimidated.
I love it. All right. Favorite caddy nickname?
Oh, God. I'm going to say Willie Cemetery Perchie. And I have to tell you the story. Cemetery was the caddy for President Eisenhower when he was a member of the. But he got the nickname Dead Man because when he was caddying, he was also a drummer at a nightclub in Augusta. And he was dating this young lady, and she wanted to take it further and get married. He didn't care to do that, so he broke up with her. And so she was offended by that. And so she got some of her friends and met him out back of the joint he was playing drums at and attacked him with knives. And he went to the hospital. And evidently, the doctor gave him too much ether in surgery, and they thought he was dead. And so they sent him down to the morgue. And he woke up in the morgue and scared the mortician half to death. And therefore, he got the nickname Dead Man. President Eisenhower thought that was a bit too rough of a nickname, so he changed his nickname to Cemetery because he said all dead men live in cemeteries. So
What a story.
So that's my favorite one. But you can go down the list of Poe Baby. His nickname was Poe Baby because he was always complaining. So Robert Cigarette Jones, and he had to have a nickname because his name was Robert Jones, Bobby Jones. And he played football at Laney High School in Augusta. And when he was one day after school, he was behind the school smoking cigarettes with his friends, and the football coach caught him smoking the cigarette. So therefore, forever, he had the nickname Cigarette. So there's so many nicknames like that. And, you guys probably have nicknames too, but I don't know if you want to reveal those or not.
Nothing as good as Cemetery.
Do you think you could go to the National now with a stovetop hat on, like stovetop?
Stovepipe?
Stovepipe, yeah.
Probably not. They'll make you wear the green baseball cap. So a cool thing. I'm changing the topic here, but at the Masters in 2 weeks' time, you're going to have Joe LaCava the third and Joe LaCava the fourth caddy in the same tournament, which I think is really cool. I don't think any father and son have ever caddied in the Masters, at least as far as documented cases. So that's pretty neat.
That'd be neat. All right. What is your favorite golf book besides the many that you've written?
Favorite golf book? Probably Well, I'm reading one now, Richard. It's called Commander in Chief.
I am.
It's Rick Riley wrote a book about Trump playing golf and how he cheated when he played golf. So it's pretty intriguing with some of the shortcuts he takes on the golf course when he's playing golf. So that's the one that comes to mind right now.
That's the current one. I got you.
Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah.
All right. If you could hit one golf shot or play one hole at Augusta National for the rest of your life, what hole or shot would it be?
12. Just because there's so much in them.
The first shot or a different shot?
Well, I don't know.
From the tee box or the drop zone?
Yeah, the tee box on 12, because this hole in the golf course, it's the most intriguing because the wind is whipping around there. I've seen guys who have a routine and they stick to it. When they get to the 12th hole, they get out of their routine just because they don't feel what club to hit. You could make a 10 on that hole very easily. It's a hard little hole.
Yeah, you survive 12 on Sunday, and you're near the lead or in the lead. You have almost clear sailing from there on. That's an intimidating shot for.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yep.
No doubt.
I was just thinking I could make a 10 on every hole at the Augusta National, but we won't talk about that. All right. Favorite snack on the golf course?
Peanut butter crackers.
Side question:
Yeah.
favorite concession item at Augusta?
It's a toss-up between traditional pimento cheese sandwich or a Georgia ice cream sandwich.
Oh, those are so good.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Let's take the Masters logo out of this question, but favorite golf course logo?
Ooh, favorite golf course logo? Probably Marion.
The wicker basket.
Flag with the wicker basket flag stick. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Love it.
All right.
Yeah.
Final question. What's next for Ward Clayton?
What's next? Gosh, I think that'll be on 2 weeks from now, or the week of the Masters, since we're talking. I think there's always great stories at Augusta. I think a lot of people that go need some kind of pocket guide or some kind of A to Z. Giving away my ideas here about the Masters. I think a lot of people would be intrigued with, where do you go? Where do you stay? How do you get tickets? What some of the interesting stories are about all those things. It's just sort of the whole hodgepodge of Augusta.
You write something about how you get tickets. That'll be a bestseller for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a secret. I was like, wait a minute, there's a secret to that?
It's you do or don't, right? And that you find out sometime in July whether you do or don't, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, legendary Caddies of Augusta National. Ward, tell everybody where they can find and purchase a copy of your book.
You can go to your local bookstore. You can go to Amazon. You can go to BlairPub.com, which is not a place you get a cold drink. BLAIRPUB.com. That's the publisher based in Durham, North Carolina.
Well, that's it for this episode of That's Good, Pick It Up, a podcast mostly about golf books. Hope you enjoyed this one. Nate and John are doing an incredible job bringing these golf stories and authors to you, the audience. We hope you enjoy it. Make sure you are following along so that all new episodes drop right into your favorite podcast platform. Till next time, this is Robbie. That's good. Pick it up.